One of the things that really propelled me to success was that I brought on a virtual assistant using the tech and then partnering it with good leadership of making sure procedures get written, making sure you're overseeing them, meet every week. It can be short. And there you're going over your work stuff, but you're also getting that community piece. You don't want your virtual assistant to feel like they're totally removed. So that's part of why it's a work piece and a community piece. I think it's important to build community, to build rapport with your virtual assistant, because when you treat them respectfully, they're more likely to do the same to you.
What if I told you that the key to scaling your business isn't about working harder, but working smarter, and that the secret weapon might be sitting thousands of miles away, ready to help you transform your business? My name is Erik Cabral, and if you're new to this channel, this show exists to provide clarity for 1 million mission-driven entrepreneurs and brands so that together we can create an impact for eternity. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, which will continue to help us build this community. So in this episode, I sit down with an incredible entrepreneur by the name of Adrienne Green, who's not just breaking boundaries in real estate, but also revolutionizing how businesses can leverage virtual talent. We dive deep into the world of virtual assistants, exploring how the right team can multiply your productivity, and hear an inspiring story of entrepreneurial courage. We'll talk about overcoming business challenges and how Adrienne and her family are literally writing their own rules about work, education, and living life on their own terms. This is where I really geek out about world schooling, but more on that in the episode. So stay tuned and buckle up, because this conversation is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about running a business, raising a family, and what's possible when you're willing to take bold risks. Now let's get into it. Hello, folks, and welcome back to the show. I am today just so blessed to be here with super interesting, super fascinating business owner that has a wonderful story to share in terms of how she built her real estate company and evolved into other businesses that we're going to uncover here, specifically around building your team with VAs. So I just wanted to welcome Adrienne Green to the show.
Hey, Erik, I'm so happy to be here. We're going to have fun.
Yeah. And you're broadcasting live from Japan right now.
Yes, I am. I love being on these podcasts and getting to talk to people like you. So it's worth the fact that I'm 13 hours ahead and it's the middle of the night.
Yeah. Midnight specifically, you shared. And I'm like, Adrienne, we can do this when you get back home. Let's talk at a normal hour. But this is semi-normal for you, I guess, now at this point.
Yeah.
I just wanted to continue, the conversation we were having prior to hitting record, in that you learned a lot of lessons in your real estate business, and you started building teams and hiring. Can you start, expanding from that and with the audience?
Yes. So I was a real estate investor, am a real estate investor. And as part of my real estate investing, I became a real estate agent. And in 2020, with everything that happened that year, I moved from Northern Virginia outside of DC to Chattanooga, Tennessee, brand new market where I knew one person, and that person was also a real estate agent. So there I was needing to relaunch my real estate agent business in a new market with no community, no sphere of influence, nothing like that. And one of the things that I did that really propelled me to success was that I brought on a virtual assistant. So as soon as I had my first closing in my second month there of actively being an agent, I knew that in this market, I moved from a pretty high priced market to a market that was median purchase price around $325,000. And so I knew, hey, to make the money I want to make, I'm going to need to do a lot of deals. And if I have to do all the admin work, all the operations, all the contract stuff to close these deals, there's just not enough hours in the day, while also being, a wife, a mother of 3 children who at that ages were 0 to 5 years old. And, all those things, I wasn't going to be able to close enough deals. So it was just a math equation, which was good, because then I got past all the emotion, all the fear, everything like that. It was just, I need to bring on a virtual assistant to handle all that admin work so I can do the number of deals I want to do to make the money I want to make. And I couldn't afford a local assistant. It was just, this is what I could afford to get this work done. And so I had to jump into it. I had to embrace it. And it was huge. It was transformational. In 6 months, I was launching a real estate team where I had other agents working for me. And so from that, my husband and I launched a virtual staffing business. And a lot of my world is either about real estate or virtual assistants now.
Do you find that are you working mostly with real estate agents currently? I know you work with investors as well.
Actually not. And, part of that, so we've had this virtual staffing business for over 3 years now. And, my background is business, finance, and I taught high school math. I love the numbers. My husband's background is as a computer engineer. So same thing, analytics, everything like that. And so we've always analyzed the data on what is true about the clients who are succeeding versus the ones who aren't, right? Because we are a subscription-based model. People just pay a monthly fee to get this virtual assistant service plus, the tech stack and the support and everything like that. And so we can measure the success by the length of that subscription, right? Which people have been with us from the beginning, which people quit after, let's say 1 to 3 months, and what's that difference? And the challenge with real estate agents is that a lot of real estate agents, as you know, Eric, they're solopreneurs. They almost pride themselves on doing everything themselves. And that is a trait that we saw with people who don't succeed, because you have to give the virtual assistant work. You have to be okay. And there's a lot that goes into that, emotionally and psychologically. You have to be okay with handing off the work to someone else. And we found that real estate agents just really weren't willing to do that.
So who's your ideal client then that you love working with?
Right. The ideal client really is somebody who is a business owner, an entrepreneur who already gets the value of leveraging other people's time. That's one of the key characteristics of people who have succeeded. So it can be in any field, any business field, right? It can be in real estate. It can be in investing. It can be in tree removal. We have a client who's like tree removal and gutter cleaning, right? We have a lot of bookkeepers and accountants. It can be any of those. It's typically service-based industry. And it's somebody who's already either been a partner or has already had some other admin work for them or already has a team of some sort, because they've already made that mental jump of realizing, I don't need to do it all. I just need to make sure it all gets done. So anybody in a service-based industry who gets that idea and that concept is someone who really succeeds with virtual assistants.
You bring up a good point. These are typical entrepreneurs who have that mindset to leverage other people's time. And I have an interesting question, because I've heard this before, in that attorneys, doctors, there's certain industries and sectors where they do not staff overseas, but they are successful businesses, but there's some hesitation or fear around that. Do you find that to be true? And if so, why do you think that is? And is that an industry you could potentially tap into and serve?
Right. We haven't had much experience at all with physicians. I will say that any attempts with attorneys or lawyers hasn't worked out, because of course it's their job to think of like the worst case scenario and, to stay within their comfort zone. And while I can tell you that, statistically on all of our history, on all of our virtual assistants, that we have not had issues with, data theft or any of those issues that an attorney would worry about, identity theft or anything like that. And practically, it's a whole lot less valuable for somebody overseas to try to get something like, let's say, a social security number, because they don't live in the world where they can use it even, right? But the attorneys always worry about that. And I think part of it is they don't know, we source exclusively from the Philippines. They don't know the Filipino legal system. They don't even know what they would do if something did go wrong. And so I think, attorney mindset, protecting, limiting risk, everything like that, they keep it to what they know. They keep it in-house. They keep it in the U.S.
I want to shed some light for anyone who's listening who has a business, is ready to scale. They are open to leveraging other people's time. What are some of the barriers that we can help them get over so that they do sort of take that leap and trust, basically?
And I don't want to make it sound perfect, Eric. I know we've talked about that, part of why I help people with virtual assistants or I do things like this is because I mean, VA fails happen, and it's not rare per se, because in general, managing another person is challenging, right? Like bringing other people on your team is challenging. And then you put that person and you make them entirely remote. You put them on the other side of the world. And that just means you've really got to you've got to know a lot of stuff. And so some of these concerns, like I get it, and they're valid, and they do require, you are required to be a stronger leader, a stronger manager when you have a virtual assistant versus if you have someone in the office. Because like, for example, you can't just have them shadow you, right? You can't just have this person follow you around and take notes and pick up on what you're doing. You have to be explicit about, I'm going to schedule a face-to-face meeting, a Zoom, a Google Meet, whatever that looks like. I'm going to schedule that every week. And I'm going to also either make recorded videos or, have all of my documents in a Google Drive instead of, paper pencil files here in the office, right? It does require some technology, some intentionality, some development of those leadership and management skills. So some concerns about that are valid. And yet I think if you're willing to put in that work, if you're willing to put in, like I typically say, the 20%, the virtual assistant can meet you there and they can do the other 80%.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, you and I have spoken many times, and I've shared with you my experiences with VAs, and we've used them for the entire life of On Air Brands for 6-7 years. And it's a wonderful opportunity to take a lot of things off your plate. But you're right. In terms of your leadership abilities, or at least someone on your team that can lead and inspire and keep them engaged, that for sure is necessary. Don't get me wrong. There was a time where I hired when I was not at that level, and it was challenging for sure because they're on their own island, figuratively and literally, where they are just not plugged in the way somebody here in the States or somebody in your town would be. So what are some of the challenges, so some of the solutions to that you would offer people to, like you said earlier before we recorded, getting plugged into their culture, or at least understanding whatever their holidays or what means the most to them,
right?
Like
so
that.
I think there are several aspects there. And the first, would be that tech aspect, right? And that for me, I think I see a huge difference in success rates with a virtual assistant when you use a task management or a project management system. So I love Monday.com. I swear I'm a bigger fan of that than most people are of their sports teams. That's how much I love it. But that is such a robust system where you can do things like, okay, is your virtual assistant going to check your calendar every Monday morning and send you a summary of your appointed meetings? Or are they going to check your email? Are they going to do your social media? Like, what are they doing for you? Whatever those routine tasks are, whether they're repeated, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, you can set those into Monday.com as these repeating tasks. Because one of the challenges that people have is they just give the virtual assistant something once. They're like, just go do this for me. But then once the virtual assistant is done, as a business owner, it comes back on you to task them again. And so it's much, much, much more efficient. And you're going to see a lot more time gained if you give them tasks that they can do again and again and again. And a great way to do that is to do that with a project management system. And then the second part of that is having everything as a procedure or system, which you don't need to get started. I know that trips up a lot of people and they need it to get started. You don't. You just need to make sure that as these tasks get figured out, as they get figured out what the virtual assistant's doing, as the virtual assistant figures out what they do, they write a procedure. And with AI, this is easier than ever, really. You can take a video, make a transcript from that using AI, and then AI can write a procedure from that. That's a pretty darn good first draft. That did not exist when I started tasking virtual assistants, so we didn't have that. But, I'd say start with using the tech and then partnering it with good leadership of making sure procedures get written, making sure you're so overseeing them. And then that other piece that you spoke to, that community piece, right? Because you don't want your virtual assistant to feel like they're an island, right? You don't want them to feel like they're totally removed. So that's part of why it's a work piece and a community piece of why I recommend especially for newer virtual assistants, weekly meetings, right? They can be 15 to 30 minutes long. And, I will say I got some virtual assistants who worked for me a few years now, and we meet once a month, but generally for someone getting started, less than a year of experience with a virtual assistant, meet every week. It can be short. And there you're going over your work stuff, but you're also getting that community piece, right? You're making that connection. You're knowing about their family. Like my executive assistant, virtual assistant, I know that he is one of 4 kids. He's got 2 sisters and he's got a brother. And today, it was really unusual. It doesn't happen much, but his power went out for his entire town. So he actually took the time, drove to his brother's house about a half an hour away in a different town so that he could have great internet and power and not have to be on like his phone to do his work shift today.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure, there are challenges when it comes to weather there, which is somewhat. I imagine you share with your clients that is a seasonal thing, but their seasons seem to be long. They're hurricane seasons. So anyway, the ones that we hired, there was always specifically one person that was always in challenging times and spots during hurricanes. But yeah, eventually they come back online, and as long as you have systems and processes, like you said, and everything's to the cloud, and somebody else can kind of pick the ball and run with it if they are down for any extended time. I love what you said about the culture thing. I want to tap back into, but the procedure process is so key. I just want to tap into that a little bit because when starting out or when hiring VAs, I remember really appreciating the ones that were proactive. And that was mainly because I didn't have processes and something for them to do every day. So they figured out what they could do and they could, there's a problem there. Let me go solve that. That was really rare in our experience to find. So those were gems when they were proactive like that. But I love what you're saying with now leveraging AI, because there was a time when I would have my integrator ask me, what do I do? And all she was doing was developing a process document. Now we can leverage AI to interview the VA or yourself and say, this is what I do from top to bottom. And it could be a mess. You can blah, 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 blah. This one all disjointed. And then AI will clean it up and create a process for you. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah. And, all of these things, like, I've told you before, Erik, they've all come from, and I think this is probably business in general. I don't think this is exclusive to virtual assistants, but they've all come from not doing it and learning the hard way, right? So like my first virtual assistant who transformed my real estate agent business, well, 6 months in, when I'm in the point of like leveraging up this team and I'm busier than ever because not only am I servicing, but I'm finding real estate agents to bring onto the team and recruit. That's when that virtual assistant had some family things going on and decided to ghost me, right? And that can be something that happens. And that's part of why I think it's important to build community, to build rapport with your virtual assistant, because when you treat them respectfully, when you treat them like a human, they're more likely to do the same to you. But she ghosted me. And that's when I realized, hey, yes, we've got some checklists, we've got some procedures, and yet there are big holes. It's not like I can just bring on another virtual assistant and they can hit the ground running here. And so that's where ever since then, I've become pretty darn intense about everything we do needs to be a procedure. It needs to have an SOP. And every time we pivot it or change it or adapt it, I'm always asking my virtual assistant, hey, did you get that change into the procedure? And that's part of also why, not to really belabor this point, Erik, but obviously I feel strongly about it. Some people, they use a video library to train or task their virtual assistants. That is what they use instead of SOPs. The challenge I have with that, and the reason I do not recommend that, is because it is very, very rare that the way you do something stays the same. But when it changes, you're never going back and redoing that video, or probably not. Plus, it's not really efficient. Let's say, a lot of things you're going to do something are going to be like a 25-minute process, potentially from beginning to end. It's typical. Are you going to go record that whole 25-minute process before? No.
Mhm.
Are you going to record all these little update videos? Like, it just gets cumbersome. So that's why I recommend maybe you start with a video. Maybe you do start with a video, and that's how you train the virtual assistant, or that's what you put into AI. Once you've got that written SOP though, and it can have screenshots or things like that in it, but once you've got that written SOP, I recommend delete the video, get it off Google Drive, do not have it again, because it's going to be out of date probably within a few months, and you don't want people going back and seeing something that's out of date. And I also don't want my virtual assistant going back and watching something for 25 minutes. Like, that's a waste of their time. I'd rather they just be using that SOP, or if they're forgetting something or whatever, that they're diving into that SOP, not watching an entire video and trying to find the exact piece of the video that touches on that step.
I love that. I love that. It's so good. And like you said, it's just normal business practice. But for anyone who is not familiar with that, or they're familiar with it, but not in this case with, trying to build a VA team. I love that. Are you recommending, any old Google document or Word document where you have the standard operating procedures and screenshots of, and then anyone can modify it, especially the one who's doing the procedure and knows it really well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we do is, we just kind of have a template procedure doc that has the general format that we like. And then that's like, take that template, go and take this video, put it into AI, get the transcript, or if the virtual assistant is the one who developed the procedure themselves, because I definitely have that. I'm like, I'll say to my executive assistant, Noe, I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. I want us to start doing this. Can you do some research, figure it out, bring it to me? We'll, agree, yes, this is what we're going to do. And then you can write it up. And they just take that template, do that, and then we're good to go.
I have something really exciting to share with you. My book, Be Your Brand to Glorify God, is officially available. Why this book? Why this book now? Why do you need it? It was the book that I was searching for when I was building my business and I was beginning my walk and then eventually my run into faith. And it was the guide that I wish I had during that time. Something to give me strength, confidence, and clarity to keep showing up, creating content, sharing my experiences at the time. It offers stories and biblical principles to support you as you build your business, your personal brand. You want to make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. And spoiler alert, it's not about you. It's not about me. Even though it's called personal branding, it's something much, much bigger. And that's what I needed. That was the clarity that I was searching for. And it's in this book. So if you're a Christian entrepreneur who's on your faith journey and you're ready to stop hiding or being afraid to share your faith, this book is for you. So grab it now on Amazon or head to beyourbrandnow.com, where you'll get the book and a free download called Know Your Roots to help you define your core values, which is the first step in building a clear and powerful personal brand. So pick up your copy today and remember to leave a rating and review to help others like you find it when they need it.
So you mentioned tech stack. How much of that is owned by Workergenix, and then also how much of it, if maybe not all of it, do you just, hey, client, we have this templates, we have all this stuff for you, and you can copy paste it. How does that typically work?
Right. So what I think our philosophy at Workergenix is to really be this concierge system to help anybody leverage virtual assistants so that they don't need to be an expert on virtual assistants. They don't need to be an expert on all of those things. Like, for example, how to set up a virtual phone number for someone, right? Like a VoIP phone number. They don't need to be an expert on that. They don't need to be an expert on the tools that these people are going to use to do their jobs. So what we do is provide the virtual assistant and frequently used common tech tools. So we have memberships or subscriptions that our virtual assistants use in order to service their clients. So everybody gets a Monday.com account with a task management board there where the client and the virtual assistant can work together to create these tasks, to give the tasking to the VA, whether they're one time, repeat, anything like that. The virtual assistant also gets a Google Workspace account with Workergenix. So they're having a professional email. They're having Google Drive space that's secure and everything to keep things. They're getting all the rest of the Google Suite tools like Google Meet, Google Chat, all of that. We also use open phone to give them a virtual phone number in the area code of the client's choosing, so they can be making and receiving phone calls as if they're in that same hometown, wherever the client wants them to be. And then there's some other tools like, ChatGPT Pro, CapCut Pro, other things like that that are often Canva Pro, for example, often used in these jobs, so that the client doesn't need to think about all these tools, get these subscriptions, manage these subscriptions, or pay for these subscriptions. It's just, here is a virtual assistant with most of the frequently used tools. Now, if you have something really specific you use, like Erik, we're doing this podcast on Riverside. That's something specific for podcasts. I love Riverside. We don't really have Riverside coming with our virtual assistants, because that's something that typically, if a client is doing recordings or podcasts, they already know the system that they want to do it in.
What if they have similar systems, project management tools like Asana, Trello, or something, and they're like, I don't want to use Monday, I don't want to learn that, and that's okay?
Totally fine. If they have their own stuff already, then, and if they want a virtual assistant who's already familiar with that too, we can prioritize that in the recruiting process. But yes, it's one of those things where it's like, we just found that a lot of clients don't have those options, and we want to set them up for success, right? That's the thing. Like, I think we're mission-driven organization where it's like, I saw the difference that, like, the 10x difference it made for me as an entrepreneur. And we're just trying to help other entrepreneurs get that same thing. So we see what can we do to achieve that and try to fill in those gaps.
So I love that flexibility. For example, like, we want Cindy to have, an on-air brands email. So she'll have a Workergenix email and, to process and communicate with your team. And then the company that's hiring you can also give them, their own tech stack. Yeah. Okay.
No problem.
Yeah. I love that. There's so many avenues of, going down. So one of the ones I was thinking about is best case scenario. And I know we haven't really picked at some of the crazy stuff that could happen. Nothing earth shattering that would like destroy your company or anything, but just like cultural things, little things that you're like, oh, I didn't know that could happen. But the best case scenario is someone comes to you and says, I love this person so much. I want to hire them full time. How does that work?
We have had people who've been with us since the beginning, and nobody really wants to take it on themselves, because there's so much that, and you would think that, right? But there's so much, I guess, that we do. Like, we handle their, paying them overseas. We handle all of that, and we don't really like get in the middle. And our virtual assistants are well paid, and they don't really want to go. I will say we've had a couple clients who maybe went around our backs and tried to hire the virtual assistants directly. That's definitely happened. They haven't come to us and wanted to do a buyout. They've just said, hey, what if we work directly? And the thing is, and I think this would resonate with you, Erik, you'd get this. The virtual assistants, what they do is they come back and they tell us. They tell us, hey, my client is trying to hire me direct, and because they don't want to go. Because, I think Filipino culture, community is such a big thing. For every, American culture, everybody, community is a big thing. It's even bigger in the Filipino culture. And what they get with our company is they get to be with all these other virtual assistants. We do twice monthly, happy hours with trainings where for half an hour they hop on, they get a training, they get to like play a fun game, they get community and connection. If they need something, like for example, there was a virtual assistant whose client wanted them to do something in Kajabi. Well, they were able to go onto our like virtual assistant chat and be like, hey guys, does anyone know Kajabi? Can they point me in the right direction? And my executive assistant has totally built out my online course in Kajabi. So he was able to be like, yeah, I did that. And he could have a quick call with her, share some resources, and get her up and running. So, when the clients have tried to, let's say, poach a virtual assistant to work one-on-one, the virtual assistants have come back and, wanted us to deal with it because they want to stay in the company, stay in the community, stay in the resources. Plus, they know that they have greater job security. Like, if they go and they work for John Doe decides to fire them, they're back unemployed. If they're working with us and John Doe doesn't renew their subscription, we feel like a sense of like responsibility, and we work to see, hey, are any of our new incoming hires, would this virtual assistant be a good fit for them, right? We already know they're responsible. We already know their skill set. So if we can find somebody that they're a good fit for, who's an incoming client or who comes on soon, we will do that. Or if we can find another role for them within the organization as well.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. You reminded me of a story where it was kind of the flip side where, and this was not a VA, this was stateside here in the US. And she tried to poach one of our clients. And my client had to come back and say, hey, there's someone on your staff who's trying to work with me directly. And so I think what you're speaking to, and the point is loyalty. So if you have strong relationship with your clients, your VAs, just all around, you would hope that you're fostering that type of communication where, so it sounds like you've built community within Workergenix that they value greatly because it's a resource for them. And it's also a way for them to grow and to be more valuable in their marketplace. But at the same time, the clients benefit from that because now you have happy workers who are evolving, getting better and smarter and learning Kajabi, which is not easy. So what are some of the other, I love that because I did interview a real estate investing couple and they built a huge team in the Philippines. You may know them. I can't remember their names, but they were on the show and, they would have, like you said, virtual parties to celebrate specific Filipino, holidays, that were like, that we don't celebrate. And then they would hire someone to make Filipino food in their companies so that they could all celebrate together and experience it together. And it's funny because I'm Filipino, although I've never been there and I'm embarrassed to say, but I just appreciated that. I was like, that's something I would love to do that, but yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yes, so, that would be. There's a couple of things I can share related to that. One of them is, I started with virtual assistants hiring direct, right? We did not have this virtual staffing company. I started hiring direct. And one of the things I did that I now know better is I was like, because I was in the real estate space, right? Like everybody's an independent contractor, right? And so I kind of had that same philosophy where I was like, okay, yeah, you're generally going to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. But if you ever don't work, you just don't get paid, right? Like if you want a holiday, whatever, yeah, you can take the day off, give me a heads up, but you just don't get paid. Well, I'm sure already, Eric, what happens? They never take days off because they want the money, right? They need the money. So they were never taking days off. And so now with Workergenix, what we have is a very thoughtful holiday schedule based off of the Filipino holidays where they get those days off. And it's communicated to the clients beforehand. If the virtual assistant wants, they can do the hours at other times, which they often do, even if they're paid holidays. They'll often do the extra work because they want to help their client. But that's one thing is, there is learning about those extra holidays and giving them the time off, kind of, forced because otherwise they'll just keep working. And the second thing that I don't know if you know this, Eric, but so as you know, I travel full time with my family and we spent the month of January in the Philippines. And while we were there, we actually had we did one in Manila and one in Cebu so that they were, easy for people from all over to get to because as you know, Philippines, scattering of islands, right? And so they're all having to fly in to these cities. But we had 2 different kind of company parties and they were nice. I mean, they were at these, we did not plan them. One of our team in the Philippines, she's the one who planned them. And they were at these really nice resorts and the food was amazing. And I was blown away. I was like, this is really nice. And then I thought about the virtual assistants. To give you an idea, my executive assistant came to one of these. This was his first time, and he's in his early 20s. This was his first time ever being on an airplane. And he lives on an island nation, right? On one tiny little island within this collection of islands. He had never been on an airplane before. And so this was a once in a lifetime opportunity for these virtual assistants to go to a party of this caliber, it was amazing. And hopefully not once in a lifetime, because our plan is to go back and do these parties again, right? But it was really cool to provide these opportunities, like this big party opportunity, and then also to think about all the other opportunities that we provide through hiring these virtual assistants, right? Like the opportunity to go on your first plane ride ever, or another virtual assistant who the woman works for us. She does accounting for one of our clients, and her husband, she has 3 kids. Her youngest is still in preschool. Her husband is able to be a stay-at-home dad because she makes enough money as a virtual assistant so that he doesn't have to work. So he's able to stay home with their youngest. They were able to buy their first car ever as well because of her income. And so it's really cool to go. I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, Erik, but the parties reminded me of that. Just again, kind of with that mission-driven idea of we really want to make everybody's lives better through what we do.
Yeah, we don't often realize that, because you have 2 sort of clients that you're serving, and that, you have your clients that need a solution, right? And someone on their staff that can pick up all the pieces, spin more plates. And then you have your staffing clients, basically your staff, that, that's a completely different sort of conversation and mindset to ensure that everyone stays happy, healthy, engaged. But I want to pull this back a little bit with the remaining time here to really to you, honestly, just to get to know you and what sort of drove you to get into your own business, to not be working for someone else in corporate America or others, private sectors, but also. Well, working mom, like a full-time mom working in the business, like how do you handle school? How do you handle all of that stuff? That's the first question I would ask.
It's only like 5 questions in one.
Yeah, I do that. Sorry, I like to nest questions. They just roll snowball. But yeah, how do you manage educating your children while you're traveling all over?
Yeah, let's start with that. So when I sold my real estate agent team, which was fall of 2023, one thing my husband and I do is we have monthly family finance meetings where he and I sit down, we go over the finances, we, just an opportunity to really talk about where we are both financially and just with our plans and everything as a family. And we realized, as I was like, I had just decided I was going to sell a team. Was it under contract yet? No. Did I have a buyer yet? No, but it was going to happen because I believed in it and I knew it was going to happen. And we're having this meeting and my husband's like, everything else we do is virtual, right? We've got a virtual staffing business that we run virtually. We've got our real estate investments, which we'd all set up to run remotely. Even the ones who were like the local investments, it was as if we could have been remote. Like, everything was handled by a handyman or someone else. And we'd always wanted to travel full time for a while, right? Take a year or 2 or something. But we thought it'd be when the kids were older, because at this time my daughter was about to turn 8. My son was about to turn 6, and my youngest was like 4 at that time. And so it was like, oh yeah, we could do this. It's sooner than we had planned, but that's also kind of scary because that means homeschooling the kids younger, right? Because we're traveling the world. They're not going to school. And even though I taught high school math before, even though I have a master's degree in education, the thought of homeschooling my young kids and figuring that out was probably the most intimidating part of this idea of traveling the world. Because I was like, especially the youngest, I was like, oh, he can't read yet. Like once they can read, I can teach them a lot, but like he can't even read yet. And so, you know what though? The homeschooling part has been such an unexpected blessing. It has been so much easier than what I dreaded it would be. And it has been amazing to see the kids flourish. So for the nuts and bolts of it, we have an online program that they're legally homeschooled in the state we lived in of Tennessee. They have an online program called Me Academy that covers the basics of the curriculum they would get in school, right? The reading, writing, arithmetic kind of stuff. It also has a ton of great extracurriculars. It does videos and assessments, and we pretty much got every kid a tablet and a set of headphones, and they work through Me Academy. And then we supplement with some other things. Like we're all working to learn Spanish right now as a family. So they have extra apps. They have a couple extra apps they use. They've got weekly lessons with a tutor. And then we also have the time and the opportunity where they can dive into what they love. So while we've traveled, my daughter, my oldest, picked up crocheting, which none of us do except for her, but she taught herself how to crochet and now can just like free form crochet different things because she's just taught herself how to do it. Like she doesn't need to follow a pattern. She can just crochet different things. My 7-year-old got really into chess, and it started in the Philippines. They have like arcades there, right? And you get the tickets and you can get prizes, trading the tickets. And he got a little travel chess set, got obsessed with chess. And he's able to play all the time because he doesn't have to go be in school. And so in Vietnam, when we were in Da Nang for a month, he had twice weekly chess lessons with the guy who runs the local chess club, because also it's so affordable. Those cost like $12 an hour or something. And he had twice weekly chess club where he played with other like expat foreigner families kids. There was a club that was set up by someone who lives there full time, a Canadian who lives there full time, who loves chess. And he set up these chess clubs. And so there's a long answer to say, yes, sometimes it's tough. Yes, sometimes I have to sit down and make sure my kids do the stuff they don't want to do. Like when they're in a tough math lesson, I have to like sit there and make sure they go through all the problems and they don't dork around, right? And yet there are other times where they're able to go deep into something that they really love that I would have never like been a part or been able to create that experience otherwise.
I think that term that I've heard used is world schooling. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that's kind of what the path or journey you're currently in. What's the plan there? Is there a plan to do that for a number of years and then come back to home base, homeschool from here?
We've traveled full time since end of February 2024. So it's been like 15 months, and we've been traveling internationally for about a year now. And we originally said when we started traveling internationally, okay, we're going to commit to a year. Like as a family, we're going to commit to a year and we're going to see how it goes. Well, since we are a family of 5, we're typically planning 6 to 9 months out. So 6 months in, we kind of had to make the decision, are we going to keep going for more than a year or are we going to head back? And we realized that we really are happy with our lifestyle and quality of life with going to all these different countries. We typically go to a country for 1 to 3 months. We'll go through maybe 1 to 3 cities while we're there in that time. And we were just all happy to keep it going. Now, I think we've tried some different places, and now we might try to do more like 3 to 6 month stints in some places that we've loved. We might want to go back and go deeper. Like we did Da Nang, Vietnam for 1 month out of 2 months in Vietnam. Now we're talking about going back and spending 3 months just in the city of Da Nang, right? So we can really have some more relationships and enjoy the things we liked more. So that's kind of our next evolution, is we're going to continue traveling internationally. We might go deeper into the places that we really love and slow it down a little bit in that sense. But it's just been the homeschooling just gives us so much flexibility that I think that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. And the other part of it that's been really cool, Erik, is, I have these 3 kids. They're about, 2 and then 2.5 years apart. And it's just, I feel like with the typical school system, and there's pros and cons to all of it, but so often people are closer to their classmates than they are to their siblings. And it's been really important to me ever since my kids were born that they are each other's best friends, that they are on the same team. Like, our last name is Green. We say it's the Green team. And it's been really cool to see the bonds and the connections that have really deepened through them being together all the time as we do these travels.
I love that. I love it so much. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware, but we've been homeschooling from day one. Kids are 11, 8 now.
I didn't know.
Yeah, it comes with its own challenges for sure. My wife homeschools. I say we, but she. And it comes with its own host of challenges. But I did entertain, and she was not into world schooling and traveling, because there's so much, even just within this country, taking an RV, for a year and visiting national parks, something like that, where they just learn so much outside of the classrooms. Yes, there's a social aspect to it that you can't replicate. But depending on what side of the fence you're on, that could be a good thing, because there's a lot of strange programming that's going on that was not there when we were growing up. Hopefully that's all being corrected with the new administration. But I love this. And the question I would have is, with the travels in the different countries and conversations and language barriers, how are the kids coping with, finding friends and communicating with kids their age and stuff? Is that interesting for them or challenging?
Because I have 3 and they are so close, they don't always we'll be at a playground. I'll be like, go play with the other kids, go talk to them. And my daughter, who's the most extroverted, she'll do it periodically. But what's been interesting, especially because we've been in Asia for 5 months, and with coming to Asia, the Philippines, English is everywhere. But for the other 4 months, we've been in Vietnam and then a little bit in Korea and then here in Japan, where it's not only are they using a different language or using a different alphabet, you know what I've been so impressed by? And us Americans get to be so lazy. So many of these kids speak amazing English. And it's very prevalent throughout. So there hasn't been too much of a language barrier, really, because these other kids will come up and they'll want to talk to my kids in English, right? And to practice their English and to show. And I'm always impressed because I'm like, hey, this is like a 4-year-old who can speak English better than I can speak any other foreign language. So I give them mad respect for that.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Did you sell your home here, or you had, how did that work when you guys decided to leave?
Well, as real estate investors, we're used to having rentals. So it was really easy to just rent our primary because, like I said, we committed to it for a year. And I realized, hey, this kind of journey, this kind of travel changes people. And it was unlikely we were going to go back and just, climb back into the lives we had before. And yet I love the house that we had. And so I was like, I want it just in case. But at this point, so it's rented out. We're in year 2 now of that tenant. After that, because it was our primary, we do have that nice, personal property tax exemption for capital gains if we sell it, while we've still lived in it for a couple of years. So odds are that's probably what we're going to do, is sell it after this tenant's lease is up. But yeah, that's what we did, is we kind of just cleared out all our personal stuff, put it in a storage locker, and rented it out.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Good for you guys. Congratulations. It takes courage, it takes adventure. It takes a lot of qualities that, 99.9% of people don't want to do. So yeah, you're a great example of, just taking that leap. And you're running multiple businesses, you're raising children. That's amazing. What an inspiration.
Thank you.
If somebody wanted to do something like that, what would be like a first step for you, to your recommendation for hey, you want to get off the grid? This is research, or what would be the first step?
Well, if you want to just see other people doing it, there are a lot of Facebook groups. And there's also a lot of people who share a lot on Instagram about it, who are traveling the world and who offer a lot of good practical tips. And yet also just you put yourself in that environment where you see that it is possible, and you see that people don't die and they don't get robbed or murdered if they go to Colombia like we did for 3 months, or all these things. Yeah. You have a fact to combat the fear. So that's the first thing is, social media has its pros and cons. And yet for this, it's a great opportunity to go into these world schooling groups, travel with families groups, or follow some other people who are doing what you want to do. The second thing is realize that whatever your limiting belief is about why you cannot do it, I guarantee you can, because you see people in these groups. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I am not fluent in another language. I am working to get that way, but I am not there. You don't need to be fluent in another language. You don't need to be able to travel with just a backpack. We do not. My husband very early on was like, we are not going to be those backpacker travels, because he knew he'd be carrying them all. Right? Yeah. The kids would give up. So we travel with roller bags that we check, and we pay for that. So you can do it however you want. And so I think the second thing would be, those limiting beliefs of we can't or whatever. however old your kids are, and whatever situation are, you can do it. And the third thing is, and I think this is true with a lot of things in life and in entrepreneurship, it's easier if you just dive in and do it all the time. Because, if we had tried to keep a foot in both worlds, we would have had to keep our house, right? We would have had to deal with renting it out when we're not there for, let's say, 3 months a year. If we just wanted to do 3 months a year travel, we would have had to keep our car. We would have had to deal with paying for the car, paying for the car insurance, paying for our health insurance all year round, and maintaining all of that world while also trying to do the travel world. And by jumping in full time to this travel, we were able to just eliminate all those things that we would have had in our home world. Like we sold our cars, so then we don't have to deal with that car insurance. We got international traveler health insurance, which is totally different than US health insurance. We just pivoted 180 and did it 100% going into this full-time travel. And yes, that was a little scarier. I mean, especially selling the cars and everything. I'm like, oh, we're gonna have to buy a car if or when we come back. Yeah. And yet it really freed us up to do this full time and not have to try and maintain both worlds.
That's fascinating. When you guys made that decision, what was the political climate seems to always be in some sort of chaotic form, but then also depends on how you look at it. But at the time, what year was it when you guys decided, and, being away from the United States, did that feel good or bad? Because depending on your perspective, it could have been we're out of the craziness and let the dust settle. What was the climate like at the time?
Well, so we decided fall of 2023, September, and then we went abroad summer of 2024 in June, and it's been really nice to not be in the US during an election year. And then with everything like that, and then with all this whole tariff thing that's happened this year and the back and forth on that, it's just been nice to be I'm so glad that I'm not on that just emotional roller coaster that I feel the U.S. has been on with all of the politics for the past several years. So that's been really nice to be removed from that. I will say on that note, the U.S. is one of only 2 countries where you pay income tax even if you live abroad. And they have something called the foreign earned income exemption that seeks to address that to a partial degree. But one of the things that President Trump said while he's running for office is that he would eliminate that, U.S. citizens living abroad would have to pay U.S. income taxes. I'm not holding my breath for that, but that'd be kind of nice.
Yeah, for sure. Because you're one step closer to becoming an expat, right? So I don't even know how that works. I guess you become a citizen of wherever you now live, and then now you were exempt from all taxes and you're severed from, you are no longer a U.S. citizen. How does that work?
Well, so we have no plans to give up our U.S. citizenship. That is something some people do. It's not super common. I think it's 5,000 people a year or something. It's a smaller number than I thought it was. Okay. Even though, a lot of people talk about it in certain circles of, I want to get out of the U.S. income taxes, and you really have to give up your U.S. citizenship to do that. And it does get tricky when you travel. If you stay more than 183 days in another, if we're talking about taxes, 183 days in another country, that's when you typically are becoming a tax citizen or a tax resident of that country. And I don't want to pay taxes in another country either. So we typically are going to be mindful to, not spend more than that amount of time in another country. Now, there are some exceptions to that. There are some digital nomad visas that certain countries offer where you can stay there for a year or maybe even 2 years and not have to pay income taxes. So there are some things around that. But I think that as much as the U.S. is up and down, I'd like to continue to be a U.S. citizen for the foreseeable future. And maybe we'll, get some, you can always get another citizenship as well. That may be something we'll do in the future. We'll see.
Yeah. What countries would you consider, and which ones are those digital nomad countries that allow the year?
Well, so the digital nomad visas aren't typically a path to citizenship, but they are a path to residency for a long period of time. And we like to travel so much that I'm not looking at a digital nomad visa yet because I don't really want to be in one country for 1 year right now. I do know Croatia offers that, which I think could be appealing. There's some other, I think, like Eastern European countries. And then there's some Caribbean countries that offer digital nomad 1 year visas as well, which it's too hot and humid for me in the Caribbean to be there year round. But for some people who really love the water, that is their thing. But then, the truth is when you look at other citizenships, the U.S. is such a strong passport. And so, everybody who's listening, like you're a U.S. citizen, whether you're happy or not as politics change, appreciate that you are in a country with a strong passport and you're in a country that works to protect you when you travel abroad as well. Those are two things I appreciate. And so when I look at another country, I'm like, okay, what value am I going to get here? And it's tough. I will say that Portugal, Portugal is really, because if you get a Portugal citizenship, they've got routes to citizenship through some visas, their citizenship by investment. And then you're getting that EU passport, which opens up a lot of doors within the EU. And some people also have a lot of luck with Spain, especially if you have Spanish ancestry. There's some paths to citizenship there. The challenge for families like you or I, Eric, is that Spain does not allow homeschooling. So I couldn't actually live in Spain and be a citizen there where my children would fall under their schooling laws unless I wanted to circumvent the law, which I know some world schooler families do, or if I wanted to send them to school, public or private school in Spain.
Gotcha. Okay. I love it. Whew. So many more questions, but we could talk for hours on this stuff, and you need to get to bed. Even though I think I got your brain on fire here asking you these questions, so you won't be able to fall asleep that easy. But yeah, it's fascinating to me. We could have dedicated a whole episode on this, but I think that anyone who's looking into VAs, anyone who has some hesitation, no need to. And if you do still, I would highly recommend reaching out to you, Adrienne. What is the best way to contact you if they're interested in that service?
They're interested in virtual assistants. The best way is to go to our website, workergenix.com. It's WORKERGENIX. And I have a executive efficiency blueprint there, which really can walk business owners through exactly how a virtual assistant could help them stay in their top 20% and get a lot of their busy work off their plate. So they can go check that out. Or if you want to connect with me about homeschooling and all that, I'm pretty active on Instagram, and it's @realgreen.
Love that. Thank you so much for all the resources and ideas and inspiration. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm going to look more into world schooling. My wife's hesitation is really safety, which we didn't get into, but you touched on it briefly, saying you feel safe, and a lot of that is just just social media, just exaggerating, or Anyway, I think that being able to experience those things firsthand will kind of update and change your mindset to other countries. And but thank you for this. And I look forward to seeing more of what you're doing, and talk soon.
That sounds great. Thank you, Eric.
If you were inspired or you learned something new today, please give us a like or a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. If you want to learn more about how to build your YouTube channel, your personal brand or podcast, hit us up at info@onairbrands.com. That's info@onairbrands.com, so that we can find ways that we can help you. I'm Erik Cabral, and I hope that I added value in your life today.